All right. I don't know if anyone's sticking around for my talk. Please don't feel bad about walking out, though. He was given a really good thing, but his way more technical than what I'm talking on today. So I'm Alice Keeler. If you are not on Blue Sky, me and everybody else are moving away from Twitter, so I'd love to see you over there. But I'm Alice Keeler on like all the socials. So LinkedIn, Alice Keeler, Instagram, Alice Keeler, Twitter, Alice Keeler. So the only one that's really slightly different is Blue Sky, and it's alicekeeler.com, which is my website. Okay, let's see if this clicker is going to work. I think it's going to do it now. All right, here we go. So our spreadsheet's the greatest thing ever. I mean, you can see that I have a spreadsheet shirt. I have some stickers if you want them. The answer is always a spreadsheet, is what I like to say. And while spreadsheets, I think, are always the answer, data entry is not the greatest thing ever. Like having to get all that information into your spreadsheet can be quite the hassle, and then what are you going to do with it? So ta-da, Gemini. Now actually, I did this same talk at Google Next this last year, and I had put into what was at the time Google Bard, right? They renamed Google Bard into Gemini, and then the insights that they had, they called Duet. So it was like really confusing because there's like a bunch of different names, and now they've converged them all to Gemini. So by the time that it came to give the presentation, my original talk was called Duet Your Data. And so I was like, ta-da, duet, let's do it. And now there's no joke. That doesn't really make any sense. It's ta-da, Gemini. Like, I feel like this is my life, though, is constantly like, oh, well, Google's not doing that anymore. Let's move on. So that's where the joke comes from. It's not that anymore. So if you have Google Workspace and you pay for the upgrade to Google Workspace to allow you to have Gemini in there, I personally think it's really worth it. I had, at the time that I first gave this presentation, I have updated it since I first gave it, although I did leave the duet slide in there just for fun. I had a preview of it so other people didn't have it. Yes, sir?
When you say Google Workspace, I know it's like this,
yeah.
But you have to have like a special account. So like if
Great.
I have a regular Gmail account, can I use Gemini on a regular Gmail account if I pay for it?
That is a great question. And just to clarify, I would love to like answer questions and not just be on a roll and answer questions at the end. So if anyone wants to interrupt me at any time, I actually would really appreciate that. So thank you for that. No. You can use gemini.google.com for free with your Gmail account, and it's going to be the basic free version of Gemini. That's what they call the app. For now, they're referring to the web gemini.google.com as the app, as opposed to Gemini in your Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides, Gmail, and I have it in my Google Forms, but that will be coming. So if you want to have it integrated in, you would need to purchase a Workspace account. If you're thinking about that, there's a couple ways you can do it. You want to contact a reseller, or, I mean, you can just buy a domain and then do a Google search on purchasing a Workspace, and which gives you your Gmail and everything's branded. So my email is alice@alicekeeler.com. That alicekeeler.com is a domain that I own. I've used my DNS to connect it to my Workspace account, and then that's how I get my email in through there. And I could go to admin.google.com and I can manage my whole domain, where I can add on for an additional, right now they're charging $14, but I think it's supposed to be $20 a month to get the Gemini added in there. So now I don't sell, I'm not a seller, so price-wise, don't quote me on this. So Workspace Basics is like $9 a month. I think worth it. I mean, I'd rather have my stuff branded, it's mine. You gotta kind of like think of how things scale. So, you know, my business is Alice Keeler, it's like my Twitter handle, LLC. And so I see like a lot of times like, well, you know, I'm just starting a project or I'm starting a business, and as I scale up, then I'm gonna try and be a little more official. Where I would do the opposite, if I ever get like an idea, I go buy the domain immediately. And I own like 100 domains on things that maybe someday I might do, who knows. And so the first thing I do with an idea, I make a logo, I buy the URL, and if I'm feeling like this might be a thing, I actually go purchase a Workspace domain for it because it's $7, $9, I don't know, whatever. It's under $10 a month to get the basic thing. So everything's branded together so that if it takes off and if it scales, I already have it going on in there, because trying to shift people over to something new is, I think, harder. So everyone's been contacting you at mybusiness@gmail.com, and then you're like, hey, I've got an update, now we're using this. It's a little janky. That's an opinion.
Just a quick side note.
Yeah, please, take them all.
If you have an iPhone, I don't know if Galaxy can do it or not, have an iPhone. If you have an iPhone and you have a domain name that you already paid for, you can have your email sent to the domain name and it will come to your...
Yeah, that's going to be true on any phone. Absolutely. So what he was saying is if you own the domain name and you have your email, you can still have that go to your phone.
Without having actual site being hosted.
Yeah, no, you don't need a website. Absolutely. Do not need a website. In fact, tangent, but I like tangents, so it's no problem for me. So you go out and buy imadeveloper.com, and you want to be Bob at imadeveloper.com, and you have no website. At a developer.com doesn't exist. I mean, you'll see this a lot. You'll get emails from people, and then you just take that domain off of the email portion, and you go put it into a search tab, and it comes up with nothing. They don't always have a website. A case in point, schools, a lot of times it's like that. So when I email the principal, I got this, I take off that part, and that's not what their website is. And their website actually has nothing to do with the domain name. They do something completely different for the website. For a variety of reasons. So yeah, you can do it just a Workspace account, and that's all it is. So your domain is your Workspace. But what I like is purchasing my domain separately. Like, I'm going to first, step one, I buy the domain. And step two, I do the Workspace, or I make the website. Because like WordPress, they'll let you buy a domain through them. Ooh, now what happens when you want to move? Lot more friction. Same thing, what if you want to, hey, I've decided I'm not going to do Workspace anymore. Whatever the next new big thing is. Like, I want to feel like I own my domain and I don't have to get someone's permission to be more flexible with it. Also, I put a redirect on I have a plugin for my WordPress site that allows me to make, like, remember in the last session I had alicekeeler.com/DevFest2024. Those are really easy for me to make. So I have all of these redirects and things where I can control. I have access to the DNS and the whole admin panel on my web host server, so that I can do more things with it than just Google Workspace. Yeah. Okay. All right. If anybody wants to, my friend is a reseller, and he could really care less if you bought it from him, so he's the best one to buy it from because he won't try and sell you anything. He's also a GDE. Okay, so hey, welcome. We're being casual here today, so feel free to interrupt and ask questions at any time. So you have a Google Workspace account, and you pay, in addition to depending on which level you choose to do, you're going to pay an extra $14 to $20 a month to get Gemini in your sidebar, and I'm going to tell you, totally worth it. I get it for free. I showed in the last session how in my Gmail account, Google lets me beta test it, so I have all these features that I can beta test in that account, but that's not the account I use for my everyday use. And I'm like, now that I've been beta testing it, I'm like, I need this. Like, I can't live without having it in my sidebar. So I just type in there, summarize my emails. What are my most important emails? And it's gonna tell me those things. I'm gonna be honest, some of that is a little not amazing right now, but it's just a matter of time. Like, every day gets a little bit better, and every day gets a little bit better, so I'm kind of like, ooh, now it does it. So I just keep trying. But even though it's not as full functioning as it brags to be, and to be honest with you, I have manipulated my screenshots here a little bit. You'll notice that this one is not live demo, and that is on purpose, because some of it's like, it's gonna get where you can do these things down the road, but it's not clean enough that you would be happy about it. So what you can do right now with a lot of this stuff I'm going to show you is you can kind of do it, and it kind of does it, and you'd be like, I can see the potential here once this really gets rolling. But if you're really trying to do it to get all your data out of your email, you can be very disappointed. So, yeah.
What if you went through their API?
Oh, sure, yeah. There's much better ways that you can be more laser specific. So we asked, hey, can I get all the data out of my Gmail if I were to use APIs and actually code it? Yeah, okay. But then you're not using AI to predict and to do some of that fuzzy logic, right? Although you can certainly use the Gemini API and do your own things that are way above and beyond. So this is definitely at a base level of no code. So this presentation right now is a no code presentation of just talking about some of the things, well, it's not fully no code, but some of the things you can do with Gemini in your sidebar. So Gemini. Which of my Squarespace domains are expiring? So Google domains, they folded and they gave all over to Squarespace, and I personally just don't like the Squarespace. And my friend Lucas, who is a GDE for Google Cloud, he uses Porkbun, so I'm like, that's it, I'm moving my stuff over to Porkbun. And so I switched all of my Squarespaces, so when as they expire, I'm rolling them over to a different domain host. Well, I can type in Squarespace into the search at the top, but it actually comes up with all their stupid newsletters. And this was a lot more convenient. I'm like, which ones are expiring? So not only is it not just finding me Squarespace emails, it's finding me specifically the ones that are expiring upcoming so that I can then go and transfer those over. What is the status of my orders? This is one that I use quite a bit. So I've ordered some stickers. I no longer use Sticker Mule, but I did used to like it a lot. But different, Amazon orders, some of these things, like I can ask it in plain language without trying to think about what are those keywords that are in my email that I can have the sidebar help me to think through and return results that aren't just from one website. And yeah, see that one says Sticker Mule. I no longer like them. What is my most important email? This is one of those ones that's a little fuzzy, to be honest with you. I type in there, what is my most important email, more as like a game that I play, like when I want to see, like, is Clear really faster than TSA PreCheck? And if I have the time, I'm going to do the Clear just because I suspect that it's a scam. I think one time Clear was actually faster. But so this is one of these things, like I know it does it, it kind of does it, and it's kind of just fun to see what it comes up with, and sometimes it's helpful, and sometimes I'm like, well, that's cute, but it's still kind of fun to have. Identify emails with the word receipt, invoice, or bank statement. So this is something that I, again, can do, but it's not as laser precision as I need it to be in order to pull off this task. But still what it's going to do is it's going to find for me emails that I have that have a PDF attachment that have the bank statements or the receipt statements in there. And then here is the key thing to use when you do Gemini. And you say, can you put that in a table? Like those are the key and magic words, because when you ask it to put it in a table, it doesn't just put it in a table, it puts it in Google Sheets. I'm going to show you that one. It's not in the sidebar. Okay, Gemini. Make this a little bigger. Okay, we're all going to cross our fingers that this works because it's live demo, so of course it won't work. Okay, make a table of my emails with an attachment from this week. See, you can see that it's searching my Workspace, it's searching my Gmail. Yeah. That's right. Yes, you can. A lot of times I just argue with Gemini and I just give it a little bit of encouragement. I have gotten this to work many times. Yeah, see, I told you that was a good trick. Look, you learned it. But this is the magic sauce to me right here. The magic sauce to me is this export to Sheets. So what I have been able to get it to do is I say, find me all of my receipts that I received this week, make a table out of it, so it's going to pull the information out of the PDFs, and it does. I've gotten it to work. It just doesn't get all of them. So like I said, if you really want laser precision, it's more like a fun party trick at this point, but it's still kind of cool. It's still kind of cool, I think. That's an opinion. That's all I got are opinions and jokes. And jokes. I got lots of jokes and opinions. So this is where I'm kind of faking it for you, where I say create a table, because the create a table actually doesn't currently work in the sidebar. So if you wanted to do the table, you do need to jump over to gemini.google.com, where it does show you the, open it in Google Sheets. It exports it over there. One of the things is you can @mention the files you already have and have it analyze. Hey, here's a spreadsheet of data that I have. You can do this in the sidebar, and you can do it more accurately at gemini.google.com. Say, these are my things, what insights are there? Without having to open the spreadsheet, you can have it give you some data insights. And honestly, now the sidebar in Google Sheets has become so much better. So when I first gave this presentation, I feel like the sidebar in Google Sheets was close to useless. Like, oh, that's cute. It would just constantly tell me, no, it doesn't do that. And now it's going to not only accurately be able to analyze my data, it can insert tables of sample data, and there we go. Retrieve my emails from last month. See, it does do it, just not when you're looking. If you could all just have turned around, it would have worked. Okay, so this is a funny story. The school board where I was working at wouldn't let me read my contract. And they take a 15% salary penalty if you resign after the June 11th. And I'm like, but you guys don't have the contract ready. The school board had not said what they were going to put in the contract. And I said, you're going to have to waive this 15% salary penalty. And they're like, no. And I'm like, I'm not working for you. I mean, I don't sign contracts I can't read. So I took a part-time job working on a farm. So we put out on the advertisement, he needs someone who's good at Excel. If you guys Google search Queen of Spreadsheets, I am the first result. I'm like, I can do Excel. I mean, I do consulting for Excel. I can do this. And I'm going to behave myself because I'm only going to just do this, because I can't get a teaching job in May. So I'm just going to kind of do this now and through the summer so I can get a teaching job in the fall. And I show up, and he's showing me his Excel spreadsheets, and he's so proud of them. And I'm like, can you explain to me why you have column headers in row 1011? And then he's like, gets so excited. He's like, oh, it's because I have that much data. I'm like, I would also like to brag about how much data that I have. That is lovely, but why don't you just freeze the first row? And you know what? For those of you who are Excel users, you know why he doesn't just freeze the first row. It's a pain in the ass in Excel. Super easy in Sheets. In fact, for those of you who don't know, I'm going to show you. Because I tell my students the first day of school, if you want to suck up to me, Miss Keeler, can you come over here and help me? And then I come over, and you have a spreadsheet, and you have frozen the first row. Oh, extra credit. I don't do grades, so that's actually a stupid thing to say. But please freeze your first row. So in Google Sheets, you have row indicator 1, and if you hover just barely above row indicator 1, it gets a grabby hand. It gets a grabby hand, and you just pull it down. And I just froze the first row. Yes, you can use view, freeze, and you can freeze all your rows. But why would you do that? Because you literally just grabby hand. There we go. See, I knew I needed to demo it. So I just grabby hand, and you can do as many rows as you want. Freeze away. Way, way easier than doing it in Excel. So anyway, I knew why I did it, but that makes your data useless. Like, you can't filter it. You can't put a pivot table on it. I'm like, oh, if you're not using pivot tables, you're missing out, my friends. Missing out. Okay, so he's showing me his spreadsheets, which have repeated the column headers throughout the rows of data. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to keep this to myself for right now. How did you get the farm data, the corn, the wheat, the milo? For those of you who don't know what milo is, it's shorter wheat and it's red. Feed it to cows. How do you get that into your spreadsheet? You guys ready for this? You ready? Because you're not ready. Google Calendar. Okay, like I showed up, like I'm gonna behave myself. I'm gonna do Excel, I'm just gonna do my job, and I'm gonna leave. But if you're using Google Calendar, I have a question. If you're using Google Calendar, why don't you use Google Sheets? Well, does Google Sheets do the same thing? Yep, it does. It does the same thing. Well, he walks away. He comes back in 10 minutes. So while he's gone, he did, by the way, tell me where his spreadsheets were. So I'm like, well, I'm going to code Google Calendar. So I code Google Calendar to extract all of the farm data that they've been doing for the last year and put it into a spreadsheet and sort it out. So he comes back, I'm like, here's everything you've been doing for the last year. And let me give you some insights because I have the sidebar in my Google Sheets that I'm from California. I don't know anything about growing wheat. But I got a bunch of data, and I'm going to tell him how his farm's running. And I've been working there for 10 minutes. I got a list of everything you've been doing. And let me tell you, this guy is an old, grumpy farmer, and he walks away, and he comes back and goes, yeah, good job on the calendar. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. He compliments nobody. I'll go back to my presentation slides. So I'm working on farm. I start putting everything that he has this data on. There are 30,000 acres, and there is 500 little spots where you can plant something. So now I know, do you know like when you're in an airplane and you see the circles, the crop circles for where they water them, they irrigate them? On the corners, they can plant something different than what's watered that doesn't get watered. So those are the dry corners versus what's irrigated in the center. So 1/4 of an acre, because they'll put a circle on each of the quarters, has 4 corners, so there's 5 spots of different things that you could plant on that one corner. It's bananas. So I started to organize all up because what they did, you guys are not going to believe this, they had a map of the farm, and they did the map of the farm in Excel. What? So somebody by hand made all the cells really, really tiny, and they got squares, like these number of cells represents 1/4 of the acre, and then they hand drew circles to represent the water irrigation. And so you know what happens after you harvest all the wheat? You plant something else. You don't plant no more wheat on there. Maybe it's corn, maybe it's Milo. So you got to go through by hand with the paint can to change all the circles and all the little tiny squares to a different color to represent what you're planting on the farm, right? You're like, there's no fucking way I'm doing this. Is that okay to say? Because there's no fucking way I'm doing this. I'm like, you're crazy. I'm like, I'm not doing that. So he thinks I'm using Excel. I'm not using Excel. I'm coding all of this. I'm using Google Sheets. I'm grabbing what the lady before me, what took her literally all day, I could do in 15 minutes. So I'm pulling all the data out of the Google Calendar that the guy out in the field is doing, and then I'm automating the processes to organize them into the, I do it in a Google Sheet spreadsheet, and then I copy and paste it into his Excel spreadsheet. So I get it done in 15 minutes. And then I talk to the guy who goes out to the field. So what he would do is he'd take his phone, he would start a new calendar event, he would type out manually this. We all see the problem in that, right? What are the odds that he types it wrong? I mean, it's messy data. He's just typing it by hand into a description of a Google Calendar event. I'm like, oh my gosh. No, it doesn't have to be case sensitive. That doesn't matter. But I got all this data together, and I said, would you mind using a Google form? And you're going to pick it from a drop-down, which one of these 500 plots that you're going to do, and then depending on what you're doing, because he might be doing maintenance on the plot of dirt. He might be planting some corn. He might be who knows what, right? So I got a drop-down list of things he can select. So now I've got all of this data that I can actually get some insights on because I have it all coming into Google Sheets. It took me 2 weeks, and the farmer comes over to me and he says, how come I don't have Google Sheets? That's what I'm talking about. So I converted them all over to Google Workspace after 2 weeks. I already said this, but you can see that I've got Gemini in my sidebar. I'm like, create me a formula that gives me the total number of acres of wheat in the table, but this changes. How much wheat they've got constantly changes, and I'm able to just ask in plain language what's going on the farm. So anytime he just walks in there, and he's such a smug SOB, I'm going to tell you. He's always trying to give me something impossible that I can't do. And then I always do it. It really chafes his hide, too. You know how I do it? I use Gemini. So he has a guy goes out and tests the dirt or something and gives him a 101-page document in a PDF of what's going on, of the health of everything in the field. And he wanted me to hand type into a spreadsheet all of the information from this PDF because he wants it in a certain way. Well, I'm not doing that, so I take a picture of it. I take a picture using Gemini. I'm like, extract this data and put it in a table. I'm like, I'm not typing that. I'm not typing that, so I'm able to get, it's more accurate, it's faster, and now that I've got this going into a spreadsheet, because I just took a picture from my phone, I'm able to just ask questions so that when he walks in and flippantly says, well, give me this piece of information for a report that you don't have. Well, I just throw open the sidebar in Gemini. I'm like, let me tell you. Somebody's not paying me enough. So you ask Gemini, what do you want to know? Create a formula to determine how many fields are growing wheat. And then you keep asking, create a formula to determine how many fields are, that's the same one, right? What are the different kinds of crops? And so I can just sit here without having to sift through, make pivot tables, write formulas. I can just get this information right from Gemini. I can add from Drive the spreadsheets that I already have. So here's my farm. I'm going to load that in there. So now I'm at gemini.google.com. I'm actually, instead of just using the sidebar, I'm asking Gemini, tell me what's going on with this and what data I can extract out of it. Analyzing, what insights can you provide me? It's actually writing Python code as it does that. So I've got histograms, I got all kinds of things at click of my fingers without actually knowing how to use a spreadsheet. But I do know how to use a spreadsheet. So now that I have all of these insights and I have this information, let's go about using Gemini to build a data dashboard. So what I want to do is I want to have the first sheet in my spreadsheet to say that I'm making a dashboard. I'm going to call it dashboard. The last time I checked, it doesn't work sheet to sheet. Like I'm in one sheet, I can't have it make a formula to reference another sheet. I bet you it does right now, because every day it gets better, but part of what I have to do is I do need to like swap out the cell reference to say what sheet tab the formula came from. So that's one of the minor edits that I have to make. So I said to give me all the unique values of crops. It gave me the formula for the unique values of crops. I did have to modify it to say that it's getting it off of the crop data tab. So that was just a small edit I had to make. I modified the formula. What's the formula to include? My filter, so it's going to make those for me. So I can insert where I'm filtering by the different crop. And then I ask it to give me some Google Apps script to pull information from the spreadsheet so I can create custom filters. Now this is the picture of the farm. This is all 500 little spots that you can, yeah. Okay, so he had this in Excel, and I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm not coloring these with a little tiny paint can. So what I did is I used Google Apps Script to regenerate this entire thing from scratch based on the data in my spreadsheet.
Is this the Google Apps Script result, or this is a shot of what they had?
This is the shot of what they had. This is what he had. So this is the Excel spreadsheet that he had that he was manually coloring. So this is what I'm going to recreate using app script, and I'm going to have this Gemini sidebar help me to create this app script. Right? So I've actually got several layers in here. So I've got to insert a new, I'm doing this in Google Slides. So I take a Google Slides, and I'm having the Google Sheets speak to the Google Slides. So I'm taking the data from Google Sheets, and I'm visualizing it in a custom way in Google Slides. And I'm saying, okay, like I need to place all of the wells. That's where you pump water. The special shapes that they have, things that aren't square and standard. Put the corners, that's where the water doesn't irrigate. So you can see I have several functions to generate up each of the areas on the map. So you can see it says, get the shape, the slide, this particular slide, and then I get this as a shape, and just getting these shapes, right? So it's grabbing the different shapes on here. I don't know why I'm doing the date. It is JavaScript. So Google Apps Script is based on JavaScript. So if you know JavaScript, and you don't actually have to know JavaScript because, of course, Gemini knows JavaScript. It does help to know a little bit. Yeah. Right, so I make a button. I just go insert drawing in my Google Sheet spreadsheet, and then I'm like, run this map update. So what this is going to do, see what my GIF here is going to do. It inserts a blank slide, and as I click these one at a time, do you see how it's adding in, creates a slide. It's going to color in the different regions based on zip code. Go to the next one. I'm going to place the corners. So you see each function, and I'm not typing those in. So back on the spreadsheet, you'll notice that I had, this was the location. So the thing that took me a little bit of time is I had to figure out how many pixels where each location was. But once I knew where the spot was, and I'd made it in a grid so I could actually just count, then I was able to just say, like, okay, this is supposed to be a square, this is supposed to be a circle, this is supposed to be a upper right-hand corner or a bottom left-hand corner. So long as I labeled it in the spreadsheet, these 500 corners as to what shape they were, then it generates it automatically, and it pulls from the spreadsheet, did I plant corn, did I plant wheat, did I plant milo, and assigns it the correct color. Plus, it's going to pull the plant date out of the spreadsheet. Because before, you were doing every bit of that manually, right? So what if I want to change what I'm planting? Yes, sir. Yeah, no, but I do have one button. So I did the 8 different buttons to demonstrate. Well, actually, I had the 8 different buttons because sometimes I just wanted to look at where my wells were. And sometimes I just want to look at where the corners were. So each of those layers to me, sometimes I wanted them. But I do have one function that says this function, this function, this function, this function. That's what map update does. So I had the one button that says map update, and it does all of the functions. Yeah, I just had broken it down into sub-functions, and since I had it in sub-functions, I at least had a little bit more control over what I wanted to display. Yeah.
So did you sell in the system, or did you just...
Well, I mean, working for, $12 an hour. Yeah.
sell in the system?
Well, I can't sell the system because it's super custom. And so I've had a lot of people say that to me, like, well, now you have this whole thing that tracks farm data, but it's his wacky way that he did it. Like, nobody uses Google Calendar. Who am I selling this to? All right, so since you say that, funny story, I got fired. So, everyone knows I'm not going to stay working on the farm forever. So the other lady who doesn't know how to make a pivot table or write an Excel spreadsheet formula, he gave me a raise, so then I was making more money than her, and she threw a fit, and he wasn't willing to pay her as much as he was paying me, so I'm the one that got fired. What? So, I know, but she's not going anywhere. She's going to die working there, so it's crazy. So this is completely 100% generated from code, 100% generated from code, because everything that I made when I did this is me having the mindset that I'm not going to be there in a few months. Like, someone else has to be able to do this completely independently, just push a button and create the farm map. And then I've got all 500 things on the spreadsheet, so all they have to do is change the wheat's now milo. So you see I'm going to click on one, I'm going to switch it to milo, I'm going to hold down the Shift key. So I select all of those, and I just turn them all to Milo at once. And then I hit the button, and boom, my entire map is purple. And now they're all Milo.
And that's the place where all of the wheat is?
So that's now Milo. It was wheat, it was corn, it was a bunch of different things. But what used to take somebody weeks to put all of this data on there, so long as you're just keeping your data, once it's in the spreadsheet, I just have to do some minor updates, and I can use some spreadsheet formulas to do things in mass. Well, now I can update the map, and the map is always current, which includes the plant date, because it puts a very tiny text box on each one of those that says when it was planted and what variety was planted. You won't like it, but yeah. It's Alice Keeler. It's youtube.com/Alice Keeler. But I make videos for teachers. Yeah. Well, maybe you would like it. I could definitely do a better job with my YouTube. Yeah. I mean,
You said that like it was like a small YouTube.
I have 27,000 subscribers. I know, but my 12-year-old doesn't think I'm good enough because I don't have a plaque. I'm like, but I do. I do have a plaque from Google. In fact, it's much more prestigious. I am the only female Google developer expert for Google Workspace in the world, and I have a plaque. But, it's not a YouTube one, so it doesn't count.
She'll understand.
Yeah. So you can combine the power of Gemini to make data dashboards. You can use Gemini to make your app script so you can make your data dashboard visualization really super specific that you can't sell to anybody else because it's just the way you want it. Because don't we all have a farm, something that's so specific to us? And that's why Google Workspace is the solution. Thank you. All right, any other questions? Yes, sir.
So at the beginning of the talk, you were showing us some functionality that you could use Gemini to summarize your emails.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious if you know anything about this. Like maybe sometimes you get emails that have personally identifiable information that
Yeah.
you don't want
Okay.
Gemini to look at. Is there any way?
So if you have Google Workspace, they do not use Gemini to train your data. You don't use your data to train Gemini. So their slogan is your data is your data. So it is actually in a walled garden that is not being, your data is not being stored or anywhere or used to train Gemini. Now if you have the free version, that's not true. So when you go to gemini.google.com on your Gmail account, anything you put in there is used to train their models. I am a champion innovator. I don't know what that means. So I'm a GDE for Workspace, and they just made this new program called Google Cloud Champion Innovators, and anybody who is a GDE for Workspace is automatically a Cloud Champion Innovator, so it just means I get to go to twice as many meetings and still not get paid. It's no problem. I'm done. I'm just answering questions. Yeah? Okay, well, thanks for coming.